All right, we are recording now. Thanks so much for being here, Tom. Welcome to the Curious Expression podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's great to have you on the show. So, Tom, I know that you have some experience in acupuncture.
Yeah.
You recently just wrote a book about cupping.
hmm
Uh, can you share a little bit about how you kind of got into this sort of Eastern type of healing?
Yeah. So I seem to be telling this story a lot lately, and I think it's relevant, right? For me, if you wanted to help people, there was Western medicine. That was the route that you were told. You're going to be an MD, a nurse, something in that arena. And when I got to college, a series of events that had happened, which were pretty much out of my control, opened the door and really showed me that like East Asian medicine was a profession to go into, and that it could really help a lot of people. So that involves even coming home from a break from college, and my mom actually used to do these raffles for our high school, where she'd ask local businesses for donations. And you go down into my parents' basement, and there would be boxes and boxes of different items that she'd grouped together for these baskets. And she had this big pile of books that some bookstore had given her. And sitting right on top was one called Opening the Dragon's Gate, which was about Taoism and a Taoist sect. And I said, "Hey, mom, when's the auction? Can I borrow this book?" And she goes, "Just take it." There was like 60 other books there. They weren't going to miss that one. So I read the book, and it kind of got some wheels turning. And I signed up for a Tai Chi elective at college, or should I say, like a club. Um, and I had an Eastern philosophy course as part of my undergrad program. It started to change my pre med major into, wow, I wonder if there's something here. Through a series of events, I ended up my junior year switching schools. And in that intercession, I received a postcard in the mail from an acupuncture school. And 2 weeks later, I was enrolled, and that was over 25 years ago now. I've been licensed as an acupuncturist for 23, so it was probably around 26, 27 years ago.
Wow. And so this all this Eastern medicine, I know it kind of relates to this concept of qi,
Yeah.
and I believe that's spelled QI, or sometimes in English
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just spelled
Well, it depends
CHI.
on how you write it in English. So there's about three different romanizations of Chinese that we use. QI is the pinyin version, and that's probably the most common. Sometimes you'll see it CH apostrophe I. Sometimes you'll see it CHI, and it's really just what organization decided they wanted to make the characters into something that was a little bit more phonetic for non-Chinese speaking people.
Mhm. And so is there a lot of science behind this, like, I guess, chi energy? Because I think one of the biggest criticisms that I guess chi usually gets is that, oh, it's just some
Yeah.
kind of like made up thing. But is there science behind chi?
So it's interesting because I think there was a big disservice that happened as acupuncture migrated western. Um, the concepts that we use in Asian medicine work in an entire system, right? It was an idea of how when we affect one area of the body and we see something else happen, we need to figure out how that's connected, right? When we talk about chi from a more modern standpoint, I'm not trying to devalue it because we'll see kung fu movies where people are like shooting it out of their hands or they're stopping people's hearts or something crazy like that.
Mhm.
Um, it's very funny because there's a very famous Tai Chi teacher, and I'm not sure if he's still alive. um, William C.C. Chen. He practiced out of New York City for a long time. And he wrote The Biomechanics of Tai Chi Chuan, right? He used the term biomechanics, a very Western sounding term, right?
Mhm.
And he starts with a newspaper article that was from, I think, the New York Post or something, where a younger martial artist was challenging him and challenging him, and he kept saying, no, no, no. Finally, one day, the guy comes and takes a swing at him in the street. And the New York Post or whatever outlet it was that relayed the story said, Master Chen didn't even touch the man, and he flew through like just a perfect kung fu movie scene. He flies through a fruit cart, 20 feet
Mhm.
away. And William Chen actually wrote a response to the editor saying, "Hey, please publish this." And the whole thing was, no, I hit him. I hit him. It was proper body mechanics that allows the chi to go, right? So
Mm,
when we talk about chi as this idea of this mystical energy, it's not that. Chi is in a more like physics type sense. When we talk about chi, is it does my body have the potential energy to do the things it needs to do, right? Or does it have the kinetic energy? Is it doing the things it's supposed to be doing right now, right? Because we're
mm,
not doing everything all the time, but we need to have the potential to do it or not have the potential to do it. And when we describe chi like that, it sounds more like a physical function, which I do think is more in line with the traditional meanings. I'm sure I'm going to have other acupuncturists, other East Asian practitioners fight me on that. But when we compare that to what we're seeing with modern science, right? A lot of people say, "Oh, it's not scientific." Well, we have more studies than physical therapists and chiropractors put together. Most of them are confirming what we've known for thousands of years. Hey, it works for this condition, it works for this condition, it works for this condition, but they're explaining it in modern physiological changes.
mm,
When we still go back and say, well, why does all this happen? We don't know why putting the needle in causes all that. So we revert back to the classical, well, we put the needle in and we corrected the flow of chi. And then
mm,
the body could do what it needed to do, right? So when we look at it a little bit like that, I've always been kind of a little averse to the woo woo side of it, and it's not that there isn't weird things that happen, but weird things happen in Western medicine too. That person you think isn't going to make it pulls through. Somebody has a near death experience and they come back and telling you all about the nature of heaven and this kind of stuff.
mm,
We can't say whether or not any of that's real,
mm,
but what we can see is time and time again people laying on the table, and we switch them out of fight or flight and we put them into rest and digest. That's autonomic nervous function, right? That's vagus nerve, right? This is a whole hot button topic, whether you're talking from biohacking or functional medicine. How do we get people out of that fight or flight and put them into rest and digest? Because that's where our body enters its repair mode, and that's what acupuncture excels at.
mm. Yeah, even something just simple as like the placebo effect, for example.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I know, we don't know why exactly that happens sometimes.
It's interesting, and about the placebo effect, right? I'm not shying away from that. Our studies will outperform placebo time and time again. But if we can convince you that something's going to work, it's more likely to work. I mean, right? We have nocebo, which is the opposite of that, which is you think something bad's going to happen, and guess what? Something bad happens. So we need to be aware of that, regardless of what intervention we're using, what type of medicine we're practicing. But we should be able to play that up. I mean, my mentor used to tell me a story. He wasn't a marketer, right? He had a whole bunch of students running around telling everybody how great he was. So he had a busy practice all the time. But what he said is like when you're starting out, maybe you and there's another acupuncturist across the street, and that acupuncturist's bed, that their table isn't as comfortable. Oh, their room isn't as nice. Oh, they don't play nice music. So those little things, even though they're not making you a better acupuncturist, make the experience better for the patient, and then they're more likely to come back to you. So yeah, if you can get the placebo effect to work in your favor, definitely do it.
Right? Well, okay, so let's say I come to you and,
Yeah.
I'm having some let's go with the knee. Let's say I'm having knee pain. It's my right
Okay.
knee. So how does acupuncture or like how would you I guess facilitate the acupuncture? So like would you stick needles in my knee? Is there like certain spots that you're supposed
I
to
actually
hit?
have to teach a lecture to the Department of Defense in August on this exact topic. So, great question. um, Within that, there isn't when we hear acupuncture, right? We hear, oh, it's going to be needles in the body, right? We know that's the outcome. For people on the inside here, there's multiple systems. Acupuncture is not a static thing that hasn't evolved. It's evolved since its inception, and it's
Okay.
continuing to evolve throughout today. So there's different theories, different systems, family systems, different systems in different countries, and within that, there's a lot of different theories on how we would treat even something as simple as knee pain. Right? One, there's a theory where we don't want to spank the crying baby. So if the knee hurts, we don't want to run right to that area and throw a whole bunch of needles in it. When we treat, at least in my system, we eventually want to get to the knee, but we're going to want to do things around that with the idea that we want to draw blood in and out of that area. One of the big reasons we have pain, right? Yes, we can have damaged tissue, but that damage leads to inflammation. So we know that acupuncture, on top of regulating that fight or flight, rest and digest mode, also locally in Japan, they'll refer to an acupuncture needle as an artificial splinter. So if I put a splinter in your leg below your knee, your body recognizes it as something's broken the surface of the skin, and I need to send blood through there, right? So how's it going to get there? Well, it's going to get there through the knee. So what it does is it opens up all the blood vessels from the low back, off the stem of the body, all the way down the leg. Now, in doing that, it's going to flush the tissue in the knee, right? So we're going to get old inflammatory processes like cytokines or lactic acid, whatever tissue damage, metabolic waste that may be sitting in that area that's not getting good circulation to flush out. And as it does that, we're driving in fresh blood to help relieve some of the pain as well as heal the joint. So unless it's torn, or if you tore your meniscus or you tore your tendon, if it's partial, maybe we can do more. But if it's completely torn, well, you're probably down the road headed for surgery. But we can definitely help you with some pain relief, keep you up and moving while that's going on. Now, after we've gotten that ball rolling, we got some information. We do want to work in the area locally, and depending on the intake, and sometimes we'll do some orthopedic testing. There's a lot of palpation. What are we feeling? I press here, you say how. That's always a good indicator for us where we want to be. But within that area, how do we put together a system that treats you, one, not only addressing your symptoms? So yes, we want to take care of your knee, but looking at you as a whole person. So yeah, maybe you have some knee pain, but your digestion's off or you're not sleeping. Well, while you're here, we want to address all of that. We don't want to tease things out and say, all right, we're going to do 20 treatments on your knee, and then we'll do 10 on your gut, and then, hey, you mentioned your neck, so after we get through all that, we'll start working on the neck. We want to roll that all into one treatment, because the expression is rising tides raises all ships. So if we can improve one or two areas and your whole body function, even if we're not directly addressing the knee in some of those stages, we should be able to help you feel better overall.
Hmm. And would it be a similar process if we're doing cupping instead?
Yeah, and cupping, I'll say, is a little bit more horseshoes and hand grenades. Where we're covering a bigger area. Acupuncture, we want to be on the bullseye.
Mm.
Cupping is, hey, he pointed to his shoulder. I found some great spots. As long as the cup is touching that, we're going to get some positive benefit, right? So cupping acts kind of like a reverse massage, where it's pulling tissue up into the cup, right, through creating a vacuum. And that's doing is pulling the skin away from the fascia away from the muscle, and allowing fresh blood to flow through that tissue. Now, the side effect is that suction is breaking the capillaries at the surface of the skin, which is why we get that perfectly circular bruise. But even that has some healing potential, because your body has to keep sending blood to that area to repair those little capillaries and clean up that bruise. So for the initial, we're creating some space for movement and some free flow, and then over the next few days, we're continuing to bathe that area in fresh blood to kind of keep that healing process going.
And would you recommend people try doing cupping at home? And if so, what should they be aware of?
Yeah, yeah. So it's the whole reason why I wrote this book, because cupping therapy, uh, as far back as we can tell, was a therapy that was done in households. Right? We called it grandma medicine, folk medicine, whatever you want to call it. And it spread throughout the whole world. So it may be Egyptian, it may be Persian, it may be Greek in origin. One of the oldest texts we have is an Egyptian text that they call the Ebers Papyrus, which was a medical manual, 1515 BC. So by that count, it actually predates our acupuncture textbook, our first solid acupuncture textbook. But um, it must have traveled the Silk trade routes. It went to Africa, it went to Russia, it made its way to South America, or maybe it was discovered in South America. Once again, once we go back that far, history gets a little fuzzy. But within that, even in China, when it was written about by Chinese physicians in 300 AD, the idea was this is something that they do at home, but it has real clinical value, so we should be doing it too. Like it was originally thought to kind of be below a doctor.
Mm.
So yeah, it traditionally it was the matriarch, the grandmother in the family, the village healer would do it before you sought more intense medical treatment. So today we have tools that are made out of silicone or they have a pump and they're plastic. So we don't have to do the traditional method, which is using fire to burn out the oxygen to create the vacuum.
Mm.
So in my clinic, I still do fire cupping. If you want fire cupping, please go to somebody who's licensed, trained in and knows how to do it. But at home, for like 20 bucks or less on Amazon, you can get a set of silicone cups or plastic cups. The book covers the main different types that you can find on the market. Gives you the pros and cons of each of them, shows you how to put them on, and then the following chapters are where to put those cups for different conditions. So that's the goal, is to get people proficient doing it at home. I intentionally made the book a short book. It's not meant to be a giant textbook. It's meant to be a quick and easy read to have you up and running quickly.
And is there like an age range for cupping? So like for example, is should old people not do it?
So this is a little bit more nuanced because there's very few conditions where people like that would prohibit someone from getting cupping. The biggest one that comes to mind is pregnancy, and it's not that if you were pregnant and you got cupping that something bad's going to happen. It's just that with pregnancy we don't want to risk anything, so the blanket statement is don't do it if it's something that hasn't been shown to be clinically safe. I do know pregnant women that have done it. I don't recommend it. Um, but the older someone is, the younger somebody is, the dose is less, right? So fewer cups on shorter time, not a strong stimulation, but this is something almost everybody can do. Even The Godfather Part 2, I reference that one because that's a movie I remember with some clarity. There's a scene where the infant Fredo is on the kitchen table and he's sick. So Nona, the grandmother, puts a drinking glass on his chest, using basically fire cupping to pull the evil out of his chest, if you will. But that's a reference to saying like, oh, he was always weak, which is kind of a shame because cupping feels pretty good. You don't have to be weak to get it.
Mhm. I like you mentioned that example from the movie. So like, so cupping's not just for like physical ailments, it can also go into like
No,
the psychological side.
I this is one of the fun things. I mentioned it with acupuncture, right? Fight or flight, rest and digest. Massage will trigger the same response. It'll switch you out of your sympathetic nervous system, which is go go go, fight fight flight, and kind of knock you into this. Wow, I'm kind of sleepy. What people tell me clinically is when we put the cups on, they might go on and they're a little intense, right? They're tight, they're pulling the skin. And then after a couple of minutes, that skin relaxes, the fascia relaxes, the muscle relaxes, and that person nods off. The time and time again, I'll walk in and I'm like, "You okay?" And they're like, "Yeah, you just woke me up." Yeah, so it feels pretty good for that. We don't have the same amount of studies for things like anxiety and depression, but anything that's going to trigger that response to get you in that rest and digest stage is going to mellow you out and level your mood out. I mentioned chest issues. There's less research on this. There is some positive research showing that what we were using it for clinically for thousands of years, which is respiratory health, we can affect the lungs. There's a couple of studies that show that applying the cup to the surface of the body hits 6 inches deep into the tissue. So we're
Oh, wow.
increasing circulation that deep, even on somebody that's wide like me. 6 inches is at least halfway into my body. So we know we're hitting the organs with this. People use it classically for digestive disorders, constipation, diarrhea, allergies. So there's a broad spectrum of why people can use these, and with those it's like, well, where do you think you would put them? Well, if I'm
Mhm.
having some lung stuff, I'm going to put them over my lungs, front and back. I'm having some digestive stuff, maybe I'm putting it on the belly or the back where the organs are. And then for pain stuff, especially with the silicone cups that come in a wide variety of sizes, we can even get them on elbows and wrists and things like we couldn't do before because you needed to have a glass jar, and those glass jars won't conform to the joint. The silicone will.
Mm. Um, and so you mentioned earlier that when you put these cups on, it creates like a circle, like kind of
Yeah,
ring or whatever. So is there like so for example, when I go to the doctor and they give me a shot, I'm supposed to
yeah,
like check it like after 2 days or whatever to kind of look for
yeah.
like I guess abnormalities or something. So let's say somebody does cupping at home. Is there any sign that they should look for that like, okay, maybe this isn't healing like it should be?
It's very hard to overdo it, especially with the silicone cups and the pump. If you over pump, yes, you can get some blood blisters. I've only seen that happen once. And it was literally the person just kept pumping the pump, and well, 3 to 5 times is what it says in the instructions. Well, it felt good, so I kept going. Or if people leave them on for hours and hours and hours, yeah, that bruise is going to be pretty dark and it's going to take a lot longer to clean up. So far, I don't think in the almost 5,000 year old history, I don't think we've lost anyone. So at least not from cupping. So I think it's relatively safe, especially when we remove the fire for for most people, most conditions. I will say that the marks have been some of the best advertising for my clinic because somebody goes to the gym, they see the marks on their shoulder. Where'd you get that done? And they this guy up the street. So in most times, people look at the cups or they take photos and they tag us on Instagram or something because it looks unusual, and
Mhm,
for lack of a better term, it is a perfectly circular hickey.
mhm.
It's about as dangerous as a hickey.
And what's the length that you're supposed to keep the cup on? Like, fif
So
10, 15 minutes?
5 to 15 minutes is probably the safe window with some of these milder cups. you know when we do it in clinic, we're going to get the strongest suction we can. Sometimes it's like 5 minutes, and it really depends on a bunch of different factors, and one of it is how dark does that mark come up and how quickly. So we
Mm,
might have some people that could lay there for 20 minutes and their skin's not even really going to bruise up, and that's okay. We don't even need to go that long. But within that time, we'll know, okay, this is an area that just doesn't have the same amount of vascular, the small capillaries. It's not as effective or affected as we thought. It's not as damaged as we thought. And some people just don't bruise.
mm,
So if you go on the internet and you look at a bunch of acupuncturist websites or anybody that's doing cupping, they'll normally have a chart that says, oh, if you see this, this is what this means. And oh, if it's dark, it was more stagnant there. And they're not saying anything wrong, but that's not always 100% accurate either. There's a thousands of reasons why that bruise might be darker on you today in this spot, and then the next time not like that. Everyone talks about Michael Phelps as kind of like the big hit, and certainly in Baltimore where I am, and he's originally from, the day after he was on the Olympics in 2016, the local news crew was there filming a piece on cupping with, and the big question was why were his so dark? And it's like, well, chances are he jumped out of the pool, his blood was still coursing through his body, and his trainer started putting the cups on. So he had more blood circulating through that area at that time, and it was pumping. So when he broke those capillaries, boom, they filled up and got dark real quick.
mm,
So everybody doesn't have to look at oh, I didn't get the mark. We want effectiveness. We want pain relief. We want to feel better. We don't need the color to be purple and look all scary if it doesn't need to be.
that's a good point. And so with acupuncture or cupping, do you also incorporate like herbal medicines along with it?
Yeah, we do. So my degree is my master's is in Oriental medicine, which we shy away from that term now, but East Asian medicine is what we prefer, and a big pillar of that is Chinese herbal medicine. What I found over the last couple of decades is even if I can get the patients to comply, chances are their gut isn't as healthy as it needs to be. They have some form of leaky gut, some small intestine bacterial overgrowth, and the herbs aren't as effective as they would be classically because they have an underlying gut health issue. So it's not that I don't give them that often, or I don't give them as much as I don't give them as much as I could, because I really feel like people should be working on their gut health through a cleaner diet and supplements, and then we'll find that the herbs and supplements tend to work a lot better. Um, it's one of those things where I see so many people that are on a laundry list of prescription drugs. I also don't want to add one more thing just to dump another thing on them. I tend to get a lot of chronic illness, a lot of autoimmune disorder, and long-standing diseases. When I started out, it was a lot easier. It was like low back pain, knee pain, that kind of stuff, allergies.
Mhm,
But once you start seeing a couple of people with severe conditions, you tend to get a reputation. And Yeah, it's a little bit more work, and normally they're coming in with a quite a long list of things that they're already doing and taking, and I would rather work on the physical part of their body, getting that functioning as I can, so their other internal supplements, drugs, those things work better.
mhm. Uh, has your practice ever thought about, or maybe you do it, do you ever use, like, herbs, I guess, like, marijuana or potentially even, like, psychedelic herbs like,
Um,
psilocybin, anything like that?
we've how do I say this? So legally, now in Maryland, cannabis is recreational. The second it went medical, we brought in a company to help our patients with the medical certifications. So basically, they just partnered with us. We would refer them over. They make the phone call, they do the intake, they give them their medical card, and it worked really well because a lot of things that we're treating, and this is interesting, acupuncture. So we know cannabis and CBD and most of the cannabinoids bond to two different types of receptors in the body. There's CB1, which is the neurological, so the central nervous system, the brain, and the peripheral nerves all light up with CB1, these receptors on the nerves. Um,
Okay,
and then CB2 is more for the immune system function. Now, interestingly enough, we didn't know about the endocannabinoid system until the 90s, and there was a couple of doctors doing research on like, hey, look, these receptor sites are all over the place, and look, they light up when somebody's high. Well, they found out that acupuncture stimulates the production of an endocannabinoid called anandamide, and ananda is Sanskrit for bliss. So
mhm,
they call it the bliss molecule. And when we treat you, and this is acupuncture, cupping, massage, a lot of different techniques do this. You kind of leave. Some people report they feel a little high, and that is because of the endocannabinoid anandamide, and it looks just like weed. Now, psychedelic mushrooms, we're starting to see them pop up everywhere. I did a 150-hour training course in psychotropic and psychedelic drugs. So, psychotropic is any drug supplement that has an effect on the brain, not necessarily psychedelic. And it was herbal based from around the world, so it covered different areas of the world. And here's what you find here. Here's what you find here. And it's pretty interesting because even the shaman from China, pre-Taoist, might have been playing with them. We know there might have been Buddhists doing it. Certainly, every long-standing culture throughout the world, the Celts, even stories about witches. The whole reason they could fly on a broomstick was because they were taking psychedelics. Uh, Reindeer, Santa Claus, anybody that was flying or going down chimneys or magical probably did some kind of psychedelics. I'm excited. I've really read. We have Johns Hopkins is a stone throw away. They recently, like, I got $10 million investment in their psychedelic program. They have a whole bunch of studies here. It's very interesting for me. I do know a couple of clinicians that have started ketamine clinics for PTSD. I think we're starting to see that uh, in its infancy again, even going back as far as the 50s and 60s, we had some amazing research, and then this kind of swing back. But I think it's here to stay. I see so many people in the game that I probably should have started it in 2001 when I graduated, being an advocate to make any progress, because there's been people that are fighting the fight long since it was illegal. I do a podcast with a friend of mine called The Reverent Health, and we just had a guest on that did, um, these kind of clandestine clinics that are like underground, and for PTSD, she'd done some really high dose MDMA and had some amazing results with it, and is now out there advocating. And it's funny, she wrote a book and she can't really advocate too strong because it's still really illegal. But a phase 3 clinical trial just started on MDMA and PTSD. So that could be all around the corner. So it's interesting because we did talk about placebo effect, and we did talk about the mind here. If you believe you're going to be all right, you're going to be all right. So I think psychedelics are really something that can offer that, if nothing else. And certainly the research seems to show otherwise, that it's going to help with a lot of things.
Mm. Yeah, I agree with you that I think these alternative forms of healing are definitely rising, and I think it's gonna
Mm.
rise even more. And I think a lot of this is in response to COVID.
Yeah.
I think we can all kind of agree that that whole situation was not maybe handled in the best possible way that it could
I
have.
I
And
look, I any side of it, whatever you're on, yes, it could have gone a lot better.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people, they kind of the way they responded to it was this idea, it was kind of like what we talked about, the placebo, that if I don't
Yeah.
think I'm gonna get COVID, I'll probably be fine. And unfortunately that didn't always work.
Not
Um,
always, no.
yeah. But some people did make it to the other side, right? And so
Mhm.
now they have this distrust of government and
Yeah.
unfortunately a little bit of a distrust of science as well. And so I think because of that, we are going to see a lot of um, alternative medicines or just other underground stuff kind of happening going forward.
I think to even add to that, I think there was a big focus on individual health, right? Like never before, right? I don't certainly when we were able to reopen, right? We're not an emergency clinic, we're not urgent care, so we shut because there was a statewide, hey, if you're not emergency medicine, you're not practicing right now. Okay, great. I'll sit at home. Well, when we reopened, all those emergency medicine practitioners, all the MDs, all the nurses, all the NPs, they were my clinic to deal with the stress of everything. Yeah, and then certainly when people started to feel more comfortable going out, our clinic, I mean, we went from seeing, maybe 3 to 400 patients a month to like well over 500. And now there shows no signs of that, right? We're getting more people in there. We have a bunch of services at our office that are little less mainstream. We're seeing almost 700 patients a month now.
Well,
Their focus is, to your point, some of them don't trust the major medical system. Some of them are kind of falling through the cracks, right? No one can tell them what's wrong with them, and they're not getting any answers. But at least we can offer them some kind of therapy or something that might help them while they're figuring it.
mm. In your institute, Charm City Integrative Health in Baltimore, you guys
Yeah,
offer other types of methods as well, right? Other than
yeah,
acupuncture
yeah,
and cupping.
yeah. So acupuncture being kind of my first love, I was looking at services that did something that acupuncture did from a Western standpoint, but without having to be practitioner driven, right? So we talk about reducing inflammation, improving immune system function, helping regulate the gut, helping your body run better. And we put together a bunch of services: cryotherapy, sauna, salt therapy, exercise with oxygen therapy, red light therapy. All of these things stimulate your body to work better in a way that acupuncture does. So in my head, it's all East Asian medicine, even though, cryotherapy kind of became a buzz thing in like 2016. It was already 40 years old in 2016. And that was kind of interesting to me because it's like, oh, you guys are all catching on now. This was invented in 1978 in Japan, right? Even red light therapy. It's like, wow, God, I got a panel sitting on the wall right here. I just spoke to somebody earlier today. She's like, oh, I just bought my face one. And I was like, oh, that's great. They've been around for almost 50 years now, but I think the access to knowledge, we can all hop onto the internet and say, hey, what should I do for this? And you'll get a laundry list of conventional treatments and alternative medicine. So for us, I wanted to put all these services that we could that play well together and pair them up in a way we call stacking. I mean, it's not a, you know, we don't we, you can't you can't trademark that term, but we're combining our services in a way that seems a little bit more intelligent. So if somebody's coming in for respiratory health, well, what are we going to do? Okay, we're going to do cupping and we're going to do the salt therapy and then we're going to do the oxygen therapy. Why? Oh, really clear out the sinuses, really get circulation through the whole respiratory system, and hopefully send you home feeling better than you came in, and do that all in one session. So that's kind of, I don't want to say that's our secret sauce or something like that, but we do that in a way I don't think I've seen another clinic do. I've seen other people with similar services, but it's more kind of like, oh, you want to come in and do that? That's fine. I mean, if you want to come in and do one thing at our office, we're happy with that too. But you know,
Mm.
we have some options for people.
Mhm. A few of these I haven't heard of, so let me just make sure I understand how
Sure,
these
sure,
work.
sure.
So cryotherapy, is that the one where you're kind of taking the ice bath?
I so we have an ice bath too, but cryotherapy uses liquid nitrogen cooled air. You know, some of them are electric. Uh, ours is the industry gold standard one. It's a class 3 medical device in Europe, but here, you know, if you got the money, you can buy one. With that, you're basically chilling air down somewhere between negative 184 degrees Fahrenheit to negative 256 degrees Fahrenheit, and you stand in that in your underwear for up to 3 minutes. We give you gloves and Crocs to keep your toes and fingers warm so you don't get frostbite. But we want this rapid cold to really squeeze everything out of the extremities back to the core of the body, right? So we've basically drained out inflammation by the squeeze. And then when you get out, your body has this reaction where, oh my God, I almost froze to death. So it opens up all the blood vessels and pumps fresh blood that just came from the core with oxygen and nutrients back out to that tissue. So in that similar way where we've created this kind of like space with cupping, we basically squeeze the body out and then we're like, okay, fresh blood back in now. And we flooded the tissue with fresh blood. So you know, people tend to feel really revved up after that because there is an endorphin boost. Part of it is your body is afraid it's going to freeze to death, so it's going to make it a fun time, and it's going to give you a whole bunch of endorphins. You know, one of the side effects of that is, especially the first or second time somebody does that treatment, they come in and almost 100% of the time say, I can't believe how well I slept, right? Like they've gotten off the roller coaster, now they're crashing, right? So it's pretty amazing. You know, the ice bath works a little bit different in that water is somewhere between 60 and 40 degrees. We don't set our super cold. There's no real reason. And the heat gets kind of pulled out of your core. So cryotherapy has to be dry because when anything that's that cold is going to freeze, even salt water, even oils. So you got to come in there clean and dry. The cold plunge, you're not going to freeze in that. But I will say a few minutes in the cold plunge is so much worse than 3 minutes in the cryotherapy. We, myself included in this highest setting of the cryotherapy, I've done it so much that it still felt good, but I didn't get the rush anymore. I
Mm.
haven't been able to get over that hump with the cold plunge yet. We've had that for well over a year, and it's like, no, every time I get in it, it's still a struggle. But you do feel great when you get out.
Mm. And is that cold plunge done in the dark? Because I know I've heard a lot of people what they do is they like lay in a
No, no.
chamber.
Yeah, so sensory deprivation chambers, float tanks. Those are a little bit different. Float tanks were invented by a man named John Lilly. Speaking of psychedelics, he was a big fan of ketamine. But he was a psychologist, and what he wanted to do was remove you from your body as much as he could. Very interesting thing. So the sensory deprivation chambers are set to 92 degrees. Both the air and the water are set to that because that's roughly what your surface body temperature is.
Mm.
You lay in 8 inches of water that has 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt in it. So you're as buoyant as you can be. Half your body is going to be out of the water, and you're in a soundproof, lightproof chamber. And within a few minutes, your body doesn't know where it is in space, so it lets go of everything. I do love them. I wanted to bring them to my clinic. I ran out of floor space. and unfortunately plumbing is kind of the biggest issue with them, and there was no way we were going to be able to get permits to break up this concrete floor that we're on, and it was just maybe in Charm City Integrative Health 2.0 version we'll add them, because personally I get a lot out of them. I picked services I also liked. Unfortunately, the busier we get, the less I get to do them. And that includes the float tanks, even though we don't have them. I do normally like to go and find one where I can and use them, but I would love to have one in my center.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel like that's always the issue. There's just never enough space for everything.
Well, yeah, you're either running out of space or budget. It's it's like none of these things are extremely like, so just $20 more. Oh, no, no, no. What, 50,000? Oh, okay. I'm gonna pass on that. But they're fun to think about when like our center is really working the way we want it to. So we've got a couple more years on this lease. We'd love to expand and see where we're going to end up and what else we're going to add. So I'm hopeful that the next version is even more robust than this one.
Mm. And then we had two other ones. We had salt therapy
Yeah.
and then red light therapy. If you just go really quick into
Yeah,
those
yeah.
two.
Salt therapy is a dry salt. So over about a half an hour, this chamber we have, it's called the salt cocoon. It's this nice little pod that's got but they do have rooms, and sometimes they'll have like fancy Himalayan salt bricks that are backlit and everything. The Himalayan salt is just for aesthetics. You don't want to inhale the minerals. The minerals are amazing to eat. Himalayan salt's great for you internally. Breathing it in, it's not so good for the sinuses. So you're actually breathing in pure sodium chloride, and that is medical grade. And there is a medical grade sodium chloride that gets ground up into a microfine dust, and then about 3 tablespoons is what you'll inhale over half an hour. And if you're familiar with a neti pot, that's wet salt water through the sinuses. The advantage of the salt room or the salt pod is that you're inhaling that all the way down into your lungs. So it's breaking up mucus, it's fighting certain bacteria, it's reducing inflammation in the airways, it makes it easier to breathe. So we have a lot of people that use that, especially now. Maryland is full on allergy season already, and it'll be this way probably through October. But within that, that is really for respiratory health. It does have some benefits to the skin too. And then red light therapy is the same frequency. So it's near infrared, which is about 860 to 880 micrometers. And then red light, which is about 630 nanometers. Sorry, not micrometers, even smaller. And what those two do is they mimic the early morning sunlight or the sunset time, that golden hour, right?
Mm.
And what we found is that has the most therapeutic frequency coming out of the sunlight for us, right? Yes, we do need the UVA and UVB. Do not go tanning. The dermatology friends of mine would curse me for that. But within that, this red light and near infrared stimulates the mitochondria of your cells. So that's the powerhouse, right? From seventh grade bio. When that gets stimulated, it starts making more cellular energy,
Mm.
right? So we start having more energy in the cells for cellular respiration, for exchange of nutrients, and those cells all make up the tissue. So that tissue then has more energy. Uh, Red light therapy has been used for pain relief, for overall fatigue, for gut health, even because those near infrared do penetrate a little bit deeper and can get into the gut. And we like to pair that with our exercise with oxygen therapy because that puts extra oxygen in the blood. And the mitochondria need the oxygen to make that conversion. So what we do is we flood you with oxygen, we put you in the red light. It's like a 1-2 punch to kind of get your body making more cellular.
Mm. Out of all of these methods that we talked about, which would be the best for back pain? Because I think, especially these days with modern lifestyle, a lot of us,
Yeah.
we sit in very bad positions. And, I hear it all the time. Everybody saying, "Oh, dude, my lower back is killing me." Which of these
Uh,
methods would be the best for back pain?
with the expression is never ask a barber if you need a haircut. I'm gonna say acupuncture or cupping. I love massage as well. The amount of clinical research we have on acupuncture and low back pain is insane. We have some very good studies on low back pain and cupping, but I'm going to lean with my first love and say acupuncture there.
Mm, okay. All right, Tom, my last question for you today. What
Sure.
advice would you give to a young adult that's interested in pursuing the same kind of work that you do?
So look around. When I was in school, there was a lot more schools. COVID was not kind. Acupuncture schools are not big. So when you couldn't go to school and you couldn't do physical, like clinical stuff because you're not allowed to be in groups, a lot of them didn't make it. So look around, see what's out there. I do recommend it as a field. It is not the easiest field to stay up and running in, and part of the reason is we're not getting hired by hospitals. There aren't so many clinics that are hiring, right? You kind of have to go in and open your own clinic or work for somebody else, and those are harder to find jobs. But it's definitely worthwhile. I don't plan on going anywhere, and like I said, I'll be, I think, at the end of this month officially 23 years in practice. So it's been great to me, and you have to have a passion for it, though. You really have to be willing to work for it.
All right, Tom, before I let you go, where can people find you or get a connect with you online?
My main website is charmcityintegrative.com. That's TIVE integrative. And you'll find everything about my book, everything that we're doing in our clinic, all our social media, everything will be there.
All right. Well, thanks again so much, Tom, for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. I think the biggest thing you've done today is alleviate some of the fear that I had about acupuncture because I did
It,
not.
it should it should feel good. You should really enjoy the sessions.
Mm, yeah, the thought of kind of needles being poked into my body was kind of anxiety feeling, but I think you've
I get
kind
that.
of
That's the number
alleviated that a
one
little
number
bit.
one issue. So yeah, and believe me, it's much more relaxing than it sounds.
Yeah, sounds like it is. All right. Well, thanks again so much, Tom, for being here.
All right, thank you for having me.